Hey, what's up, you guys? Um, we're gonna kick off section 6.3 today, but before we do, I just want to make sure I quickly mention um, that um, hopefully all your IAs are in. I know some of you are still finishing that up, but try to get that in. And by this point, we are in week 3 of distant learning, so um, uh, your week 2 assignment was the homework. So make sure you get that in using the book if you haven't done so. And then this is for week 3. So in week 3, I'm going to do a quick lecture on 6.3 A and B. And then there'll be assignments associated with that. So please, your notes will be attached to this Google announcement or Google assignment. So there's a slideshow of the notes, so you can pull those up and follow along with me to get a better understanding and before you jump into the actual assignment. So this is a video for you to watch and go along with the notes. If you have any other questions after you see this video and after you go through the notes with me, please make sure you let me know. You can email me, text me, or you can jump into our Zoom time, which is Monday through Friday for your guys' class. It is every Monday through Friday from 1 to 2. So jump in. I'm on there, just available to answer questions if you have any. So if you're doing assignments and you have questions, just jump in on those. I'll be available to you guys in that way. So that being said, let me quickly jump into the notes for you guys. So I'm going to screen share the notes and I'm going to quickly go through that so you guys can see it with me. So as you can see, we are 6.3 is about the defense against infectious disease, which is kind of funny and ironic, but this is literally the next section that we had in our, how do I say, sequence, in our sequence. So as you guys will see, this section has a few parts to it. And the first part we're going to do is going to be section 6.3 A and B. Okay, so let's jump into it. So in section A, we're going to talk about blood clotting. So blood clotting is going to be a very important section, and then it'll kind of get us into section B, which has to do with blood clotting and heart problems that can associate with blood clots. Okay, so let's get into the next slide. So the first note, as you can see here, so you must understand that the immune system is going to be the system that's responsible for, first of all, trying to stop infectious diseases from coming in if it's possible, and then even if they do make it into your body, is going to be the system that's responsible for defending against it or fighting against it. Okay. The pathogens, because you're going to hear this word a lot and you're going to see it a lot. So just to quickly give you guys a quick understanding what that is, these are going to be cells that are able to cause some sort of disease. So any disease that can be, or that we do have, first of all, came from some kind of a pathogen entering the body. Okay, a lot of times they're found in the environment. So things like, obviously the corona now, right? Like people are trying to protect themselves to not get it from the environment, or like in the air, or if it's on surfaces, things like that. But also a lot of them live on our skin. So there's a lot of pathogens that live on our skin. So therefore, like the hand washing technique and all that stuff. We try to get rid of those pathogens. A lot of times pathogens will be on our skin. We won't know until they enter our body, and we're like, oh shoot. So that's going to be the two things or two places where we can see, or we can detect pathogens. First in the environment, that can be on surfaces, air, anything like that, and then on our skin or on our body. Okay. The very important thing to understand is that the skin, so our skin and our mucous membranes, and we're going to talk about that in a second, are going to be the first line of defense against pathogens. So before anything enters our body, it has to pass through the skin layer, if it's going to be like a puncture wound, or it has to enter our body through some mucus or some entry. Okay, so the mucous membranes are going to be, a lot of times the easiest one to talk about is like the mucus that's found in our nasal cavities. So like the through the nostrils, and it's kind of interesting because they say that when they do the COVID testing, they take a really long swab and like go way back into the nasal cavity, because they think that a lot of times it lives here before it travels down into the lungs. So this whole mucous membrane is designed to try to prevent a lot of pathogens from coming in. That's why a lot of times like our boogers are going to be that dried out mucus, and a lot of times it's drying out and trying to protect your body from these allergens, a lot of times, right? That's why we sneeze. A lot of times it's our body detecting in the mucus that, hey, this allergen or this pathogen can be harmful, so sneeze it out as much as you can. And then it produces like extra mucus and tries to run down and then dry up, and then we try to get rid of it, right? So like that's the booger's idea. So all that mucus though is there designed to prevent cells from entering the body, okay? The mucus is very sticky, and that's why it's able to trap a lot of harmful particles or cells. So that's kind of the way it traps, is the stickiness of it, right? But it is a layer, and that's talking about all mucous membranes. That's just one, right? Like our nasal, anything that has an opening in our body has technically a mucous membrane. Anything that has like a sticky, liquidy substance as you enter, and the easiest examples are nasal cavity, right, in our nose. So the other thing is that the skin, the really cool thing about having skin, or the fact that humans have a thicker skin layer, that this provides a tough and thick physical barrier. So it's talking about a physical barrier, kind of like a a wall, like a wall surrounding our body. So the idea is to have like a gated, strong physical barrier for the disease or for the cells or pathogens to not be able to enter through. Okay, that's going to be our skin, which is really cool. So let's talk about blood clotting. Blood clotting only happens when you have damage to the blood vessels. So if when the skin is cut, right, if you have damage to blood vessels, that causes bleeding, then blood clotting has to happen. Okay, I want to quickly talk about the fact that have you ever, or I know I have, but have you ever gotten a cut and then like you can see the cut, but there was really no bleeding? You can just see skin being cut or damaged, but there's no blood coming out. In that case, that means, first of all, you don't need blood clotting, but that also means you did not damage a blood vessel. So you probably cut somewhere on a surface or between vessels or something like that, to where you did not damage blood vessels. So therefore there's no bleeding, because you only bleed when you damage blood vessels. And we're talking about capillaries, veins, arteries, right? Those blood vessels. So if you don't hit that, or if you cut and that damage does not rupture or break those vessels, then you won't bleed. And that's why sometimes when you get cut, you don't see blood. But if you do get cut and your skin is damaged and there's blood vessels that are being damaged and they're cut, then this will cause bleeding, okay? Whenever the bleeding happens, or when bleeding starts, it initiates a blood clotting process, okay? And it is a process. We'll talk about those steps in a minute. But this whole process, the blood clotting process, is designed to stop bleeding to stop blood from constantly leaving your body. And the blood clotting process seals the wound. So the idea of stopping the bleeding and then repairing that damaged area to hopefully to what it was before. So the thicker skin. So therefore the repair part is really important. Okay. But the clotting process consists of cascading chemical reactions. I want to quickly talk about what that means. A cascade is a process, kind of like a domino effect, to where when one domino falls, then the second one will fall, the third one will fall. So like it's a process. It is going to be a like if I'm step 3 in the process, I need step 2 to happen before I can be generated. So it's reliant on like the domino before me to fall. So the idea is it will only happen when the first domino falls, then the next one, the next, and it's like this step by step by step process. So that's the cascading chemical reactions inside. Very important. It's going to happen inside the injured vessel. So whichever blood vessel was cut or damaged, that whole blood clotting process is going to only be focused on clotting the blood vessel. The rest of the stuff that we see is going to just be not as important for our human body, but physiologically understand that the clotting process is focused on repairing or clotting the damaged vessel, okay? And when it actually is able to clot that damaged vessel, then it can go ahead and start repairing. But it's always about the injured vessel, okay? So that showed you kind of a picture of a cascade idea. So one will fall, the second one will happen, third one, so on and so forth. So when the skin is cut, the damaged blood vessels cause the bleeding, okay? We just talked about that. This then go ahead and this starts the whole blood clotting process. And the point is to stop the bleeding and seal the wound. So if you see these domino, so one after the other, kind of like the cascade, this will happen only when the blood domino before it can fall and then trigger it. This is going to be the clotting cascade. So you see like there's obviously a lot of like these weird numerical numbers and things, but if you see these steps rely on each other. So this step happens and only then the second one can happen. So this is a cascade. So from the top to the bottom, this is going to be a step-by-step process. You have tissue factor, pathway, contact activation. So anyways, those things don't mean much to you, but just to see the cascade idea is that it is a process. One of the biggest things in this process to turn prothrombin to thrombonin and thrombonin to fibrogen to fibrin, and we'll talk about that. But the idea is there's a step-by-step process, so it needs to happen in order per se. All right, let's talk about platelets. So if you have a regular blood vessel, like you guys see here, this is a really cool picture of a blood vessel. You have your red blood cells, those little donut-looking things, and then you have these little small purple circles, if you will. Okay, these are going to be the platelets. Okay, so the platelets are going to play a huge vital role. If you guys see this damaged blood vessel, you see like there's a wall of the blood vessel that's healthy here is damaged here. You see red blood vessels leaving, that means the blood is leaving, that means you're bleeding. Okay, and then you see these platelets starting to kind of go from just floating, chilling in the blood vessel, right, just hanging out there, to then going and being focused on gathering here at the damaged site. So that's very, very important. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay, so that's really important. If you see a really cool like microscope image of blood, just like a blood smear, we have some in the classroom, but we can't see it right now, right? But you would see these are going to be your red blood cells, kind of circular, healthier, and then these little purplish kind of circular things here are going to be your platelets. Okay, so platelets have a job. Let's talk about their job. So the job is going to be when skin is damaged or cut, so like right here, they gather at the damaged site. So they're going to then chemically, they're going to get a message. There's going to be a chemical message based on damage here. There's going to be a chemical message that is sent out to the blood in this area. And every time a platelet is going to swim through, it's going to hear that chemical message, right? Hear it. And then it's going to go and get to that damage. So they're going to gather here. All right. When they gather there, it's really cool. They release a clotting factor. So they're going to release like that first step of the cascade, right? That clotting factor, the clotting cascade factor, that will then initiate the blood clotting process. So this is the first thing that needs to happen is platelets need to gather at this damaged place, okay? So let's talk about these steps. The first step, clotting factors result in production of thrombonin. So platelets get to the damaged site, they release the clotting factors, right? That's the first step. Then what happens is these clotting factors are going to then so like the result of those clotting factors being released, they're going to then produce, or the next step of the cascade is going to be the production of this enzyme called a thrombin, okay? Thrombin enzyme. So when the thrombin enzyme is produced, then the thrombin enzyme, right, because they rely on each other, so you see it in step 2 here, then the thrombin that's made in step one here. So platelets get to the damaged site, they release clotting factors. Clotting factors then, when they're released, they're going to cause production of thrombin. Thrombin then is going to convert this protein called fibrinogen. We call it fibrinogen. It's going to convert fibrinogen into fibrin polymers. So real quick, fibrinogen is a single molecule of protein. Fibrin is going to be a polymer. Poly means many, as we talked about. So basically it's going to create from fibrinogen, single layers or single proteins, to then a polymer, meaning there's a bunch of them going to be in one structure. There's going to be a bunch of parts or a bunch of layers of that. Okay, we'll see that in a second. So you have stage one, right? Thrombin enzyme is going to be produced because clotting factors were released by the platelets. Then the thrombin will convert fibrinogen into fibrin. So that's an important step, okay? So if you look at a cool picture here, you have fibrinogen right here. So you have damage, you have thrombin being made, right? And then you have fibrinogen. So fibrinogen, because thrombin is there, fibrinogen then is going to convert to fibrin fibers. And you kind of see that they kind of look like fries in a weird way, but they look like they're going to be a bunch of these tannish, yellowish sticks. You can call it sticks, like strings, right? So that's fibrinogen converting into fibrin polymers, okay? Step 3 is going to be then fibrin. That's this part already, the net looking, fry looking thing. It's insoluble, okay? So that means it's not able to dissolve in water. It's insoluble. So if it's not able to dissolve in water, that means it's going to form a mesh at the wound site where platelets are. So remember, blood liquid is more than anything is going to be water-based. So if it's insoluble, it's going to then not allow that water to leave, okay? So the idea is this fibrin right here, now that's formed, it's going to be insoluble, forms a mesh, and at the wound site where the platelets are. So mesh, think of it kind of like a netting or a net to kind of trap. Okay, so sorry, my thing just kind of kicked out. Let me come back to it. So step 4 here then, okay? So once that mesh is created, then the red blood cells and small particles get stuck because they, first of all, they get trapped like in a net. Think of like fish, right? You're getting trapped in a net. And the second part is that it's insoluble. So the liquids kind of can't get through, can't dissolve and just leak out because they're not gonna be able to be soluble with the fibrin. So it traps it, and small particles and blood cells get trapped. Okay, they're stuck now, so it kind of forms a stoppage. Then this gel, right, this fibrin and these stuck little red blood cells and small particles that get stuck there and kind of get trapped, that we call it like a gel now because it's all stuck, it's not moving, so it's slowly going to then dry out. That is going to be a scab. That's what a scab is. A scab is fibrin with the red blood cells and small particles that are going to be there. When that fibrin does not let that out, right, that fibrin is going to trap it, and that's going to eventually dry up. And that's what you see on your body as a scab, okay? That's fibrin being dried up with the rest of the red blood cells and the small particles that just got trapped there. So that's going to be your scab. The scab is there until the new skin tissue is going to be formed. So that whole repair process, right? So that scab will stay there and is going to then make sure there's no more leakage out of blood and that the wound is starting to be able to start repairing itself. Okay, so that's blood clotting. It's a really cool picture. So you kind of see this fibrin right here, fibrin mesh is going to be this orange thing. So it's like a web, right? Like kind of a very interesting way to trap red blood cells and small particles. So anything that's a red blood cell size, which is really small, and then any small particles are going to be trapped. So then they just kind of get stuck there, right, in that gel, and then they'll dry up and become a scab. We call that a fibrin mesh. Okay, so let's quickly talk about coronary thrombosis. So Blood clotting that forms in your coronary artery, we talked about the coronary artery before. The coronary artery is going to be the artery that supplies the blood to the heart, because heart has muscle cells, and those muscle cells need blood to be supplied there for oxygen, and to take away the carbon dioxide, because the blood has to be supplied to the heart. So the heart has to pump the blood to itself. That coronary artery, right? Sometimes what can happen is a blood clot can form in the coronary artery, and that's called coronary thrombosis. So make sure you kind of see that new vocab word, coronary thrombosis, okay? This will result the tissue of the heart wall, so any tissue that's connected to that coronary artery where that blood clot is, that it will no longer receive enough oxygen or nutrients. So eventually it's going to start dying off, right? In other words, because it's not going to receive oxygen and there's no nutrients. So if a blood clot, if you kind of look at it here, if it happens here, if the coronary thrombosis, and this happens to the coronary artery here, then the rest of this will not get blood supply. So if you see this dark spot, that means those cells are starting to die off, okay? And that's a huge danger, right? Because this is your heart. You don't want your heart to start, heart muscles to start dying off, because then you're going to have issues. So this, some causes that can cause, or some things that can cause this, or some causes to this condition, coronary thrombosis, include smoking. So smoking is one of the highest, statistically speaking, one of the highest reasons, or one of the most dangerous things you can do for this condition, or to get this condition. Smoking. Obesity is another really high, or really common way you can get this condition. High cholesterol, right? We're talking about the bad cholesterol in food, right? And then sedentary lifestyle, okay? These 4 things here are going to be the main causes of coronary thrombosis. It's a scary thing, because if you get a blood clot in some other artery or vein, maybe not a big deal. The doctors can get in there, they can fix it. This can be really bad. So a lot of times when people feel heart pain, a lot of times they really need to go get it checked out, just in case, especially if they have any of these 4 conditions. So the idea is, this can be hard to detect, but if it is detected on time, it can help you, right? A lot of times. But a lot of time people ignore their heart pain, and that's why they can get this condition and just kind of ignore it. And you see that blood clot right there form in that coronary artery, and then just blocks it. It's kind of like a blockage to the artery, okay? So quickly to review, broken blood vessel, any blood vessels that's broken, is going to cause red blood cells to leak out. When that happens, these little pink things here are going to be your platelets. They're going to gather at the damaged site. And then what they're going to do is you see this activated platelets. Now they're going to try to gather here and form kind of a signal to cause the cascade. And then these little yellow lines are going to be your fibrin. And then fibrin is able to trap red blood cells and all the little things, and platelets are considered little particles. So they're going to be trapped there too. So really going to be a good way to clog that. So now you guys are going to complete this section here. This is going to be your review questions. I'm going to make this into an assignment, which will be part 2. So part 1 will be you watching this and going through the notes for this week. Part 2 will be you completing these review questions. Okay, so go ahead and take a look at these. You can pause this video if you want to, or you can just jump into the assignment. Okay, so that's going to be it for this lecture.